guys, welcome to the first episode of Lifting the Lid.
In this episode, expect to find out the motivations behind joining the Corps, the best and worst parts of training, and an exploration into how you shouldn't celebrate your Christmas leave.
Let's get into it. And we're rolling.
And we're in. Okay, cool. So, just got a little bit of admin to do first, just to address why we're starting a podcast, I guess. So, me and Eddie have known each other, how long? 13?
We were trying to work it out the other day, weren't we?
Yeah.
We think it was about 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah, so about 13 years, we'll call it. And while you know, I guess, my story broadly, I guess you don't really know. We haven't really sat down, have we, in detail and gone through the nooks and crannies of the story. I guess you've always been interested, because you always asked me, haven't you? But we've never actually sat down and gone through it. So we thought it'd be interesting to do so. Yeah,
so basically our friendship has obviously lasted a lot longer than your career in the Marines. So I followed you on that journey, but never actually sat down and fully kind of talked it out. Yeah,
so it's going to be interesting to see, because you'll probably bring out a few things that I've maybe buried in my subconscious that I don't really think about. So that's going to be quite interesting. We're going to address the obvious, which is the fact that you're a civvy, not a Marine. So that's the obvious thing. In to cover straight away, I've obviously retired, so I'm now a civvy as well. But so you've never been in the military, so it's your job to prize everything out. I guess you don't really know.
Yeah, I'm here on behalf of the audience, basically.
So you're here to prize everything out of me.
Right then. So
let's get started.
Where it all began.
Yeah.
School. Why the Marines?
Yeah. So obviously we went to school together, didn't we? So you know kind of my journey with that. But from maybe 14, 15 years old, I wanted to join some area of the military. So the Marines and the Paras were the ones I was looking at, just because they're the ones you hear about, and they're the ones that the people look to as the elite and the best. So I figure if you're going to do something difficult, why not do the best of the best? So if you're going to invest that much time and that much energy into something, you may as well go to the top echelon. So it was between the Marines and the Paras for me. I made the choice for the Marines about 2 or 3 years later. Sort of went firm on that decision, just mainly because there was the opportunity to get a trade as you got into the Marines. So as you get into the Marines, we'll get into this, but 2 years down the line, once you've passed training, you go into a trade. And so I thought, looking in the big picture, that when you come out of that, then you've got something to fall back on should you get injured or whatever happens through that career. So that was my kind of thinking. But I guess going further back than that, my upbringing was a lot around, my dad's now a scout leader, was fucking a scout and was really active, really outdoorsy, and so always took me along with him on those kind of adventures, I guess, as a kid. So that maybe played into a little bit of it. My brother always pushed me to do physical exercise, always had me doing sport, football, cricket, that sort of thing. So maybe those things broadly contributed to my overall decision to go into the military, I would say.
Yeah. So you're the sporty kid.
Yeah.
You're the outdoor kid. You've made the decision that you want to go into the Marines.
Yeah.
And by the way, you did. Like, you fully, when you decided you were going down that path, you fully committed. Like,
yeah.
I have various anecdotes of Chef being committed to his military career from an early age. Not least, coming in his air cadet uniform on school mufti day. That was a personal highlight. Running before school every morning. That was another one. Yeah,
I feel like you have to be, well, I felt like, probably don't, but you have to be that invested. Certainly where I felt like I was and where I projected the Marines to be in terms of a goal, I thought it was the really out of my depth almost. So I felt like I had to work harder than maybe other people. Because yes, I was a sporty kid, but I would never consider myself naturally athletic or naturally fit. I would always have to work at these things, and so I always looked at someone else and thought they're fucking naturally fit, naturally enduring. I always remember, was it James Burton? You know, he used to run the 1500 metres. So a lad at our school used to run the 1500 metres, and every time used to beat everyone by about 3 minutes. And so that was never me. I ran the 1500 metres for the first time in about year 8, thinking I was relatively fit. And I remember walking after 3 laps. So, I mean, I wasn't that kid.
Pure humble.
Yeah, so I felt like I had to work a little bit harder to get there. And that's kind of where we were. So,
yeah, so good. So, right, you've made the decision.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about applying?
So, I didn't really apply till later on because like I said, it was about 14, 15 when I actually made the decision and went firm on that and started training. But until I was 18, so that's a 3-year gap, I didn't actually apply because I knew I wanted to do college first. And again, coming back to, I guess I had a little bit more of a mature outlook on it, whereas I wanted to have something to fall back on should things go wrong. So I wanted to go to college. I wanted to join when I was 18 because I felt like I'd be a bit more mature. I felt like if I was to join at 16, having just GCSEs, then again something went wrong, got injured, that kind of thing, I would be kind of behind, and I would have to go and do those sort of things that you do when you're 16 to 18 at a later date, which I didn't want to do. So I didn't actually make the decision to apply until I was 18. So I applied on my 18th birthday, and then I guess the process goes from there. It's a lot quicker now, but it was 9 months it took me from that point to get into training.
Yeah. So you did public services at college.
Yeah.
And like, to what extent do you feel like that actually aided what you would then go on to do later in the Marine Corps? Just in case, just if anyone out there is in the same position.
Yeah, I don't feel like, to be honest, it helped too much. I feel like you could have done pretty much anything. It's more the maturity you gain in those years, those 2 years, 16, 17, 18. There's a big level of social maturity and that kind of thing that you get from those 2 years. I think that's the main thing that you gain, rather than the actual qualification or the specific course you do. I think looking back now, I would have done something like sports or sports science or something like that. That's more aligned with my interests and my values. But public services was okay, but again, probably just an extension of the cadets that I was already in. So, I mean, two of my teachers were instructors in the cadets, so there was that relationship anyway. So it's kind of easy. It's kind of maybe taking the easy option, something I knew I would do well at, and I knew I would be able to sail through without much issue. So
yeah,
so I don't feel like it helped too much.
Well, from my memory anyway, I don't really think that you were challenged enough doing public services.
No,
and I can gather anyway.
And from what I know now, obviously I don't stay in touch with everyone who was on my course, and people change and they, want to do different things, which is fine. But when we were 16 and we sat there at the start of the course, and they were like, went around the room and think, who wants to do what, who wants to join the Marines, join the police, join whatever. Lots of people saying they want to do things, and by the end, there was maybe me and one other person who were actually going down that route. So it's definitely not completely conducive to the end goal. So it doesn't really make too much of a difference. And when I actually got into training, which is obviously the people who've been successful through the application process, I don't remember anyone who'd done public services.
I seem to the retention rate on that course, I remember you telling me, was terrible. Like,
yeah, not great.
You were the success story of that cohort anyway.
Well, that's I guess maybe.
Right, okay. So application process then, the actual technical details of it. Because when I was doing some research for this podcast, that was the area that I struggled with the most. It's almost like a nether zone.
Yeah.
It's for someone on the outside, it's a bit of a grey area.
Yeah, definitely. And until you've been through it once or however many times, then you don't really know. But it's changed a little bit since I did it. So generally the structure's still the same. So you'll apply, register your interest and all that kind of thing. Then you'll go and get invited down for it's called the DAA now, the Defence Aptitude Assessment. So that's like any other job you do, where you go and do psychometric testing beforehand. Yeah. It's like that. So you do that. You do the Navy's psychometric test, which is a broad brush. Everyone does the same one. It doesn't matter whether you want to be a pilot or a admiral or whatever. You still do the same one, but you just have a different scoring system. The Marine scoring system, believe it or not, is very low. So you do that. If you pass that, which you should do, if you're doing enough practice questions and all that shit, then you get invited down for your interview. That's pretty much straight away. Interview is conducted, I think now it's back to being in person. I could be wrong. It was for a period of time, obviously online, Zoom and that kind of thing. But mine was in person. You obviously dress smart, wear a suit. It's your first interview, not likely if you're 18. So you have to go and fake confidence and make sure that you've prepared, because these questions that you get asked, if you hadn't prepared, you wouldn't have the answer, and therefore wouldn't do very well. So things like core history, things like current affairs in the core, things like how you personally have physically prepared up until that point. They're interested in that because they want to know you've invested some time and some energy into the goal first. And I was pretty good on all those things. I had a mate who'd gone through that similar process, told me the ins and outs, so that's always helpful. So I prepared well. I was successful on that, and then you go to your first fitness test and medical. They're interchangeable, I believe. Like you either do one first or the other. Doesn't really matter. I did medical first. Make sure you're right weight and you don't have asthma, that kind of thing. And then you do your PJFT. That's the major thing that's changed, really. So mine was a 2.5 mile runs. You probably remember me training for that. Yeah.
Dragging me along a few of those.
Yes, it's always good to have some company. But yeah, so you had 1.5 mile run on a treadmill, then a minute rest and a test 1.5 mile run. That was fine. Past that, and then you go to your PRMC, which is now the CPC. So I believe from what I've been told from people who've done both, maybe joined at different times, it's not as hard now as it was, because that was the biggest step change for me, because you're going from a civilian having never had any real access to the military, or certainly not been beasted like that, and you're going in, and that change of intensity is really notable. And you're certainly that second full day where you're on bottom field endurance course is difficult and challenges your mental capacity, because you're really questioning whether you want to go and do this for 8 months. That's what you're really doing.
Yeah.
It's for them to see you, and for them to realise whether you're physically and mentally capable, which is as much as for you to see them and for you to get a view of the core from an inside perspective, and kind of realise whether it's right for you.
Yeah. Well, we'll park those thoughts about lowering standards, because we're going to cross that bridge at a later date. So, successful interview.
Yeah.
Pass the tests.
The PGFT. Yeah.
When do you actually turn up at Limston?
Okay, so
with your duffel bag and your shaved head.
Yeah. Well, you don't get shaved head straight away.
Oh, okay.
You do that when you get there. So yeah, you pass the 3-day course, and then about a month later, 6 weeks later, you'll get a date for starting training. You will go down on the train. It's really easy to sort of identify who's there for the same reasons as you, because they'll get on at various stops and they're all wearing suits, they're all nervous, they've all got a massive bag, so that's how you ping it.
I was going to ask you about this. Surely recruits must just stick out from a mile away.
Everywhere they go, they all walk the same, they all dress the same, they all have the same haircut, and it's not necessarily the case they have the same haircut when you're going down there initially, but you can tell by the people who are like, you can tell their nervous disposition, you can tell they've got a new suit that doesn't fit them, and they've got a massive duffel bag going down. And then you show up first day, and that first day is like a bedding in period where everyone will arrive at different times because of the train. So as you get there, you'll get your bed space allocated, and then you'll shave your head. That's you in.
So if I remember correctly, you went down at the start of September.
Yeah.
So
does
that mean you were winter training?
Yeah.
Because there's a winter and a summer training, isn't there?
Well, it kind of spans the whole thing, because every 2 weeks there's an intake. So you're going to get everyone through the year. But mine was kind of both. I did the bulk of it in winter and then a little bit in spring, summertime.
So for me, basic training is the part I know the least about.
Okay.
Because it's behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And my only real source of information was you. And because it's so intense, I think, this is going back now, I think you came back in October for a long weekend.
Would have been something like that, yeah.
And then Christmas was like the first real prolonged period of time.
Yeah, it would have been 2 weeks off. 2 weeks off at Christmas. Yeah, that was week 13, that was. I remember quite vividly, because I just failed the test. We'll get into that.
So, first few weeks, what are you doing?
Okay, so again, this has changed, but I'll go from my experience. So first 2 weeks, a foundation. So foundation, you go into a massive block of 60 blokes. So it's 30 bed spaces one side, 30 bed spaces the other side. Every bed space has got a locker, and you're just learning how to take care of yourself in that military environment, whilst getting unrealistic timings thrown at you, basically. So what will happen is you'll get taught how to hang your stuff up correctly, how to iron, how to do washing that they want you to do, how to deservice, reservice your kit. But you'll do all these things in a lecture format, and then they'll test you. And the way they test you generally is fuck your shit up, and then they'll do an inspection. So they'll come around, they'll throw everything out of the locker, they'll flip your bed upside down, and then they'll be like, okay, 2 hours time, you got an inspection, and then you've got to go and do an inspection. So everything has to be pristine. It's never pristine, regardless of how well it's done. Even if you do the locker exactly how they show you, they're still going to throw it out. Certainly in those first couple of weeks, because they just want to show you you're not the boss anymore, all right?
Yeah.
You're now with us, and we control things. Okay, so
to summarise, you're getting thrashed.
Yeah, those first 2 weeks are terrible. So you get like 15 minutes for food. You've got like, you'll finish phys, you'll finish your PT, and they'll be like, yeah, 20 minutes. I want you showered, fed, back in here. It's just unworkable. You've got 60 lads running through the same shower block, and it's never going to happen. So they know these timings are unrealistic. Therefore, you get thrashed again. All these kind of things.
Well, from an outsider looking in, it's they're knocking you down to build you back up fresh. Yeah,
that's basically the whole of the phase one, really, where they're treating you like that. But it gets a little bit better after 2 weeks. So the first 4 weeks you can't leave voluntarily. So the first 4 weeks, because you get this like knee-jerk reaction from a lot of people where they do 2 days and they're like, this is horrendous, I'm not getting any sleep, I'm working harder than I've ever worked, and then they'll be like, I want to leave. But that same person, if you keep them in until week 4, they might have settled down, they might have got some mates, they might have settled in a little bit, so they might actually end up being a really good Marine. So they want to lose people in that first couple of weeks. So the first 4 is kind of a baptism of fire kind of thing, and then it kind of settles into the normal training routine after that, I guess.
So after that initial few weeks of basically being thrashed and dehumanised, what is the next milestone? Like, what is the thing you're working towards?
Okay, so the first milestone, end of week 2, is a big inspection in the big 60-man block. And should you pass that, which everyone really does, no one really gets held back. They will tell you in training that you're the worst troop they've ever worked with. That's normal. They'll always do that. But yeah, so you'll have an inspection, and then from there you'll move into the big boy accommodation, as they call it. So it's 6-man rooms now, so it's a tenth of where you were. So it's a lot more intimate. You get to know the people in your room, in your sections, really well, which is good. And then you'll get assigned a troop corporal. So before that point, the training team has just been introduced to you, but you haven't really had any interaction with them. Your interaction mainly in that first 2 weeks is with your drill instructor, who's your main point of contact in those first 2. Your PTI or your PTI team, and then maybe a sergeant or an officer. And then from there you get given or get allocated a training team, which is normally 3 or 4 corporals, a sergeant, and a boss.
Right. So how do you go about making friends, basically? Because from what you've said, it sounds like you barely even have time to breathe.
Yeah.
How much of your time and attention is consciously thinking, I need a tribe?
Yeah.
Or are you literally just trying to survive?
I think for me, it happened almost organically, but I guess in those admin periods, so I mentioned doing inspections and getting things thrown out, and then you're doing inspections again in the next morning maybe. In those little periods in between, you're looking at people to help you out. So someone might be really good at ironing, you might get their help on ironing. You might be really good at bulling boots, you might get your help on that. So that you kind of come together and help each other out, because you have to, because otherwise nothing's getting done. And you realise that really quickly if you're switched on, that you need these people. And that's also what they're trying to show you. You need a team to get through this. You can't get through this by yourself. Yeah. And the people who try to get through it by themselves are never going to be successful, because there's just too much to do. And you need help from your section, you need help from your mate next to you. I remember one of my good mates now, who's still one of my good mates, he was in the bed space next to me in training, and our relationship has stayed strong from day one now till now, which is 6-7 years later. So that relationship where you build in that initial phase can be really strong, and it needs to be, like I say, to get you where you need to be.
Yeah, it's that all hands on deck mentality, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
basically.
and there's
You're all in it together, aren't you?
and they make it so there's too much for you to do, and so that if you did try and just like switch off, AirPods in, and not talk to anyone, you just couldn't do it. There'll be times when they just purposely get all your kit wet or whatever it is, and then you have to dry it in the first phase, or I think just in foundation, might be wrong. You don't have access to washing machines, so you have to hand wash everything. So you've got tons and tons of kit,
Bastards.
which is like piss wrapped and dirty and horrible, which has to be pristine, which you've got to then hand wash, put in a drying room, which is purposely too small. It's just, things are just impossible, but for a good reason and on purpose. And you obviously don't realise that then. You're like, the bastards, they're trying to kill us.
So you're at training.
Yeah.
You've settled in as best you can,
yeah,
so to speak. What was the first point that you thought, oh shit? Or, what was the first hurdle? I know you mentioned that you got held back.
Oh yeah,
Slightly.
It was before then, actually, I think. So, in the first, it's weird because like as I mentioned, I've been working up to this and looking forward to this for years. In the first 2 weeks, I was like, this is amazing. I get paid to do phys. This is great. I was like swimming, because I was a decent swimmer. It wasn't that difficult. It was fairly difficult. But I was like, I'm getting paid for this. This is awesome. And then it started to get a bit more real, and I realised I was there for 8 months and not a holiday in 2 weeks. And so, kind of
that novelty wears off a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that about week 4, when you get your first exposure to the field and it gets real. So like week 4, you have an exercise called quick cover, or you did, and that was a 2-day or 2-night exercise just on the local common, and you just get ruined on that exercise, because again, it's that first time that they can do that, because on camp they're kind of limited-ish with what they can do, because they're under prying eyes. They've got HQ looking at them, so they have to do things by the book. When they're out in the field, they don't, so they can do what they want. So they will. They'll get you wet, and it's be -2 when it's February or whenever it was, November, whenever it was, and it's just it's too cold to function, but you have to function, and you're learning that, but you don't realise that until it's the end, and you think, that's why they did that, because now when I go on exercise with my unit, I've had that exposure to being colder than I need to be, and I can actually operate in that environment, but you don't realise that at the time.
Right, so
week 4, probably.
If we park maturity for a second,
yeah,
I need to get some, what I would term, immature questions off my chest.
Okay, go.
Communal showering.
Yeah.
Hit me.
Yeah, it's completely communal. So, no old bar, basically. So the certainly in foundation.
The boys are out the barracks.
So foundation is like, dick everywhere. That's what I'll describe it as. The first, actually, you might have seen on the documentaries. One of the first lectures is how to wash yourself in the shower.
Yeah, right. I was going to touch on this.
Yeah. So that actually happens. Every troop goes through that. So the corporal will be stood there with a marine or another corporal, naked, showing you how to wash your foreskin, and it's a bit of a rough half hour, that. And actually, lads, because they're trying to impress them, they're not just taking it for granted as if they've washed themselves their whole life. They can probably manage it. They've got notepads out in the showers, and they're like, yeah, pull foreskin back.
I've got an image of what's that film with Jonah Hill in it? And he's got an addiction to drawing penises.
Oh, that's in Step Brothers, isn't it? Or no?
What's it called?
Superbad.
Superbad.
It is in Superbad.
I've got visions of Jonah Hill type characters now, just drawing cartoon penises in incredible detail.
That's probably what it is. Yeah, I mean, I was definitely fake note writing, which happens a lot in training, just to try and make it look like you're listening, and really like, when's this going to end? This is uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, that is an important lesson, because while you would assume that people can wash themselves properly, actually people fucking can't, and especially when you're, like I say, in that situation where you've got such a busy shower block. It's like maybe it's about 12 showers, 16 blokes have to get showered in 10 minutes. It's not happening, is it? So if you're having a proper Hollywood shower where you got your shower cap on and you're like proper going for it, you're not going to get anything done here. So you have to learn how to kind of logistically how to get loads of blokes through shower block in one sitting. So
I guess it's one of those
specific
things
skill.
as well. It sounds ludicrous now
Mm.
when you retell that story, but you're so focused on the task at hand, you don't really have time to deconstruct it in your head. You know, like I'm watching someone tell me how to wash my foreskin here.
Yeah,
like
you don't process it at all. No, because again, and almost like anything, when you're doing it in a group environment, regardless of how ludicrous it is or how wrong it is or whatever, you don't really feel like it's abnormal because everyone's doing it, everyone's there, and everyone's with you in that moment, so it doesn't really matter.
Right, showering.
Yeah.
Tick.
Okay.
Next, guns.
Right.
When you fire guns.
First time you fire them isn't till like, I believe like week 9 live rounds.
Oh really?
Yeah,
that's
it's
quite,
ages.
That's
yeah.
quite late.
Week 9 or 10. Might be later than that.
I thought you'd be packing heat like well before then.
No, you get hands on with weapons real quick, like week 3 maybe, and you're getting hands on with real weapons, but they're obviously not loaded, and you're just going through the basics of weapon safety, weapons handling, kind of how like marksmanship principles. So when you do get on the range later on, you've got the know-how. How you just have to apply it, which isn't easy, but how to load things with an empty magazine, how to just how to do the basics. And you'll be down. They're called weapon stances, which is at the bottom of the hill at CTC, and you'll be down there for hours and hours. And people will be falling asleep, and like have to. So there's a classic in the weapon stances because they're right next to the tank, which is a big vat of cold water. When people are falling asleep, they make you sprint with your helmet to the cold water. Get almost a bucket, some cold water in your helmet, and just put it back on, and then run back. That'll wake you up, and then and then you're kind of there for hours and hours a day because it's such an important thing. Because they can't have someone who doesn't know what they're doing, safety wise anyway, handling a weapon when it's live. So they wait until that period's over, and then you pack in heat, as you say.
Right. That's the immaturity out of the way.
Okay.
I've
got that out of your system.
I've exercised that out of my system and get back on track now.
Okay, back on track.
What are the main points that you build into in training? So it's basic training is 32 weeks.
The meat of it now is 32. So I should clarify what's different, right? So now the first 4 weeks are ROP, so recruit orientation phase. So almost like a little slow build until that bit I mentioned where you go in to foundation. So now they've got a little bit more of a slow build until foundation, whereas when I was in, it was straight from civvy to foundation. So now there's that little disconnect, that buffer period, I guess. So now that makes training 36 weeks, but now it's 30. When I was in, it was 32.
Right. So that 32 weeks isn't just a straight, if you stick about, they'll let you be a Marine. Right. There are obviously challenges and tests along the way.
Yeah. Constant.
What are they?
Constant testing, constant scrutiny by the training team. Whether it's a specific test or whether it's just day to day, how your demeanour is, how you interact with people, how all these things. Because the training team live with you, don't forget. So they know and they can see all these things. And so the main things you're building towards in a testing sense, the first bit, is gym pass out, which is week 9. There's a exercise at the end of week 15, week 14. That's the final X of phase 1. So then that puts you into phase 2.
That's about halfway.
Halfway, yeah, pretty much. But gym pass out is what you're building to physically for the whole time. There's a swim test, which isn't really that bad if you're half decent at swimming. It's a battle swim test, which is I think week 13. So all these things happen quite soon after each other. So there's a period in training of about 4 weeks where you constantly feel that you're getting tested for proper tests, and if you fail those tests, you're back troops and you're no longer with the people you started with, which is terrible. So the main things, I think, like I say, the rest of it is you learning, but also constant. You got constant eyes on you whether you're doing whatever it is. If you're falling asleep too much at the weapon stances because they'll pick up on it, and then you're under the spotlight then, and that's not what you want to be.
Right. So, say hypothetically, you're getting disciplined.
Right.
Say you fail the test.
Yeah.
Say you fail, I don't know, gym pass out or whatever.
Yeah.
What happens?
So when you fail gym pass out, you say, so for example, you have to do 3 good rope climbs. If you do 2, you fail. You can rerun it, I think, in that same week. So maybe it's just like a nerves thing or something didn't go your way or whatever. Then you might pass it again, and then you're fine. If you fail the rerun, then you'll go back in training. So you'll be stalled in something called Hunter Troop, which is the remedial troop, and I have loads of different arms to the remedial troop, whether it's a soldiering failure, a phys failure, or a injury, that kind of thing. So you're either doing rehab or you're doing remedial phys or remedial soldiering skills. Then, if you go back for a physical failure, they'll 9 times out of 10 give you like a 4 to 6 week program. Say if you fail rope climbs, they give you a program around rope climbs. Make sure you're fit enough. They'll test you before you get out, and then you go back into troop. You go back into a troop that's just approaching gym pass out on that week, and you'll pass it and move forward with them.
Okay, and so that's kind of like a formal discipline almost. What happens? What happens if you're just pissing about and your attitude stinks?
Oh, well, you get an informal discipline, which normally, depending on where it is in the form of a thrashing of some sort. Where, I mean, there's loads of variations on this theme. So there's either physical thrashings or there's admin thrashings. Admin thrashings I touched on before a little bit. Where, so in the big blocks, when you're in the six man block, that's in a big, like, I don't know, 5-story building or whatever. So if you're on the top floor, they'll get you on the landing, and they'll tell you to bring all your kit, your nice hung up, washed, ironed, ready to go, ready to wear, and just ditch it in the middle of the foyer. So 3 floors down, you just have to throw it, and everyone in the troop does that with all their kit. Eventually, there's a massive pile of clean clothes. And then what they'll do is they'll get loads of buckets of water. They make you do this as well, just to rub it in.
Sadistic bastards.
So they get buckets of water, chuck that on it, loads of like washing up liquid, go again. So it's all soapy, it's all fucked. And then you have to not only go down and find your own kit, because it's all in the mess everyone else's. Remember, there's like 50 blokes with 4 different uniforms. And so there's like 200 bit garments downstairs. You have to sift through it, get your own stuff, make sure you haven't lost anything, go and re-admin it. So that's an admin thrashing. That's normally if you've fallen foul. Normally the punishment aligns with the discretion. So if you've fallen foul of an admin task, like you haven't ironed your shit or you haven't shaved properly, something around that'll happen. If it's something a little bit different where they think you need to physically discipline you, then they can do whatever. They can get you on the landing and just make you do push-ups until they want you to stop. They can take it a little bit more seriously. Normally there's, if you're in one of the blocks I was in, right next to the hill that goes down to the estuary, and there's a fence between you and the estuary, but there's still a massive hill. And so what they'll do, they'll line you up on the top of the hill and just say, right, touch the fence, first one back, doesn't go again, so pays to be a winner. That's really, really common. So they'll do like, 50 of you fucking sprinting down to the fence, all absolutely, it's like Hunger Games, you're like proper sprinting, climbing over each other, pushing each other out of the way, trying to get there. And you touch the fence, come back, first one doesn't go again, and then you go and you go and you go. And if you're not fit or not fast, you're going for like 10 rounds of this shit, so it's not good. But then again, if you come back and you are first, this little tip if anyone's going through, if you are first, you'll come back and you get in the push-up position, and you've just sprinted the shit out of yourself to get there. So the best thing to do is to be about 3rd or 2nd, because then you're gonna win that cohort, so you can like slow down a bit. So I try and be 3rd, and then I've done 3 sprints, and then I don't have to hold the plank for as long. So I'm like trying to play the game a little bit.
I love this.
Yeah, so it's all gaming.
Tactical thrashing.
Yeah, you've got to. Otherwise, you just if you switch your brain off and don't think about it, you'll end up doing more than you need to do, and that's going to be detrimental in the long run.
I also love the fact that there is almost like a fine art to thrashing.
Oh yeah.
I like to think that there's a document or a book somewhere that training staff like jot down their favourite punishments.
Oh, they definitely will be.
For future staff.
Well, you notice that if you've been back trooped, and so you've had one training team, and then you have another training team, and oh shock, they have the same ideas, they're the same thrashings. It's either that or it's because they've been through training, but both of the sets have been through training and done the same things, had that done to them. Yeah. So it's almost like an abusive parent.
It's like they inherit the trauma of their parents.
Yeah, and then they give it to you. It's good times.
Right. You've made it through training.
Right, okay.
This far.
How far are we? Up to halfway?
Up to halfway.
Yeah. Okay.
What next?
Phase 2. So you pass, I should probably go into this a little bit. So you pass the Baptist run, which is the test exercise I mentioned, on week 14. I failed that first time round. That's a navigation exercise, stalking exercise where you have to do some sniper stuff. What else do? You do some basic field craft. You do some, some judging distance, that kind of basic stuff. I wasn't great at navigation. I tried to play the game, didn't work. So sometimes it doesn't work. So what I tried to do was, if you imagine there's me here and my goal here, my objective, and then a big, sinking bog area in the middle, right? So I was like, I don't want to go through all that. And it's marked on the map. I don't want to go through that. And you should do, because that's how you follow your bearing to get to where you need to be. That's how you've been taught to do it.
And
I was
is this at night, by the way?
Yeah, pitch black. And I was like, but I can probably get around this somehow. I was trying to be smart and trying not to get wet. So I went on the track to go around. And in theory, you just box around it easy.
Yeah.
Theory didn't work. So I literally ended up miles away from where I was supposed to be. Because like I say, it was pitch black.
Yeah.
I wasn't amazing at navigating anyway. So I ended up completely off the beaten track. Our cut-off time was about 11 o'clock at night. Maybe later than that, but it was winter. So maybe 11 o'clock at night, say. I got back to our troop tent about 4 a.m. I think. I was walking along the roads where we shouldn't have been, where cars were running past, beeping me and shit.
Yeah, next to.
Yeah, on the piss. And then I got to my troop sergeant's tent and I was like, I said his name. I can't remember his name. He said his name.
Phil.
Yeah. And he was like, "Who's that?" I was like, "Marine Shepherd." And he went, I fucked it, Sergeant. He went, "Yeah, I know you did." No sympathy.
Mutual understanding.
Yeah. No sympathy. He absolutely knew that was me probably off their troop. Didn't give a shit. So I do the rest of the exercise best I could. Didn't matter. You fail a criteria thing. That's you done. You know that. So it kind of plays in your mind.
Wait, so even though you know you fucked it,
yeah,
you've then got to carry on and complete the exercise.
That 3-day, yeah, you can't just jack it in.
That's shit.
Yeah, it's not good because they give you
you know that you're going to be there again at some point redoing it.
Well, they give you the illusion that you might be able to battle back, but it's not going to happen. But
Selling
anyway,
you a dream.
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it? It's to check if you can take knocks and come back again. That's kind of the whole point of training. And then
so you got back trooped for that.
Back troop 2 weeks. Luckily, I didn't have any longer than that. Went to Hunter troop, and Hunter troop actually went on Christmas leave earlier, so I actually had 1 week and then a longer Christmas leave. So almost a good thing, I guess.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And we'll have to clip this.
Yeah.
Because if we can find the footage, we'll have to put in that video of you in Wetherspoon. This is basically like your first blowout at home since.
Oh yeah.
Since you
we will
start
have
training.
to put that there,
so if you can find it, we'll put it in anyway.
Yeah.
Part of that anyway.
Yeah, that'll be
but
it.
Yeah, because you did get a longer Christmas leave, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah, and that was the first time I kind of drunk properly, and I was obviously it was playing on my mind that I had to go and do that exercise that I wasn't good at, I thought, and that I'd just left all my mates who I'd made in that first 15 weeks. Then they were going to go and move forward in training. I'd had to join a more junior troop. So all that's playing on my mind. Probably played into the effect that we had that's on that clip.
Actually, if we just go off the beaten track for a second, that was great innings from you that night. So Shep turns up to Spoons, immediately ditches our group for someone else that he knows.
But just to clarify, I'd had a full bottle of Jaeger in about 45 minutes before this point. So not a good start.
So Shep disappears in Spoons to meet some of the people he knows.
Yeah.
Within half an hour, there is a raucous cheer from everyone in the pub, and I turn around and think, what's happened here?
Yeah.
Someone's done something. I turn around, Shep is in a semi-conscious state. Look, in a state of delusion, having just kind of... It was kind of like a Jackson Pollock down the jungle, wasn't it? It was like, there was chunks of food,
there was
some Jaeger residue.
Yeah, well, I'm not blaming Wetherspoons for this, by the way, but Wetherspoons had just put on an offer that was like 8 pints for so many, I don't know, remember it was that big massive yard or something?
Yeah, it was like a gimmicky gimmicky dispenser, wasn't it?
It was a yard of something. I was like, that's like a good deal, because you get 8 pints for however much. And they didn't have any of those big bottles left, so they just gave me 8 pints on a tray. And I was like, fuck. And we were, I don't know, the people I was with were trying to get me somewhere else, so I was trying to down these pints, just had the Jaeger, wasn't a good combo. and yeah, took the L.
Yeah, no. That's not the end of the story.
Oh yeah.
For anyone else,
yeah.
for any other person, that would have been the end of the night.
Yeah.
And you actually did get taken home.
I did, yeah. The lads I was with took me home, knocked on my door, my house. My mum answered to a semi-conscious son on Christmas Eve, this is, who'd just thrown up down himself, covered in sick, and probably really disappointed and thinking, what the hell have the Marines done to you? Probably, because that was the first time she saw me for a while, I think.
So you're in bed.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Then I have the thought.
See, this is you in a Marine kicking in now.
Yeah, maybe this was a sign. Maybe this is a good thing.
This is evasion.
Yeah, this is true. Well, I had the thought. It was early, wasn't it? It was about 6:37.
Yeah,
we started early.
You tanked it.
Yeah.
Almost straight away.
And so I was like, well, I can't end my Christmas Eve at this time of night. This is pathetic. And this is again the first time I've been out properly for a while. And I was like, I can't be doing this. So I was in bed. I got some fresh rig on, some fresh clothes. I was like, let's go again. So obviously my parents weren't going to drop me out because they knew what state I was in. I was like, no, I'm good. And then my mom left the kitchen thinking I was just in there drinking water or sobering up or whatever. When she came back, I was gone. I'd gone out of the house just to walk to our local place, which is Stourbridge, which is 3 miles away from where I was. I actually walked all the way there. I don't know why I didn't get a taxi, probably it was Christmas Eve. Walked all the way there, 3 miles.
Interestingly, didn't get lost on the night nav then.
Yes, true. Very true. So maybe I picked up some skills from the Marines somewhere along the line. But I didn't have my phone or my wallet, so yeah, that was never going to end well because I couldn't get into anywhere and I couldn't get in contact with anyone. So that was great. Got to the club I was trying to get in, and luckily my sister was in the queue at the front. She got me in.
Shout out to Penny.
Yeah, shout out to Penny because I wouldn't have got in otherwise. She was like, "Nah, I can vouch for him. He's old enough." And then she realised how I'd been for that rest of that night, and was like, "Oh shit, probably shouldn't have let you in or got you in." So she rang. So she didn't ring my dad. Actually, my dad was patrolling the neighbourhood. my dad had taken the car out Christmas Eve. This is probably midnight, bless him, and he's just driving up and down Stourbridge. My sister had
looking for his AWOL.
Yeah, my sister had turfed me out of the club. She was like, "You don't need to be here." My dad had just seen me on the off chance of maybe like stumbling out of a kebab shop or something. Brought me in the car, disappointed, and ran me home. But yeah, that was an interesting fiasco, I think.
Great Christmas. 10 out of 10 for effort.
Yeah.
3 out of 10 for execution.
I'd probably give it less than that. Christmas Day was interesting after that.
Yeah, I bet it was.
It was both awkward and with an extreme hangover, so pretty difficult to have a good time at that point. But yeah, that was my Christmas Eve in training.
There you go. Right, post Christmas.
Yeah, back to the Marines.
Back to it.
Yeah.
What now?
Back to it. So I had to rerun the exercise that I'd done. When you join a troop, there's almost a stigma to that back trooped individual because they failed something. Not with the lads, maybe, but with the training team, because they're like, "Oh, we're having like Deadwood into our troop."
Is it the mentality they want to weed you out almost?
Yeah.
And they smell blood,
or they're like testing you straight away to think like more than the rest of the lads to see what they're made of because they haven't seen you for 14 weeks. So get to that troop. There's 3 of us who failed that exercise and are now in that troop. So I knew some people, and then we go on the exercise that I'd failed. I then, to be honest, know the routes, and so if I'm being honest, cheated a little bit and just did the tracks that I tried to do the first time, but now did it, and I ended up winning the navigation. I was like, came back first, and they were like, "Fucking hell, you got better." I was like, "Yeah, I know." So came back first night, first or second night because you do 2, and then did really well on that exercise. So probably made the training team think I was really good at navigating when I wasn't, which is great. Always good.
The illusion of navigation.
The illusion of competence, which is great. And then so did that exercise, and we actually got marched back at a ridiculous pace. I had to missed that out. So I had to redo the trial run for that exerise. So you do, not very imaginatively named, Baptist walk and then Baptist run. So you walk before you can run. And then so we did the Baptist walk with our new troop, and it was horrendous. They were probably harsher than my old troop when we did it with them. They were. It's quite a funny anecdote they just brought up. That lad actually twisted his bollock on that exercise. So
now this has never happened to me.
Yeah.
But a lad that we went to school with, Matt O'Neill.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to Matt O'Neill. Twisted his bollock.
Yeah.
And the only thing he told me about the experience was that when they tried to untwist it, he immediately projectile vomited on the nurse.
Oh, that's terrible. I hadn't heard that. But yeah, so not a great experience. But I'll tell you probably how it happened, or probably never happened to me. But when you're on exercise, certainly in phase 1, they'll get you up and they'll march you to a cold vat of water, dirty, nice, it's freezing cold water in December, January time. They'll fully submerge you, and then they'll just send you back to bed. And before you get in bed, obviously you've got to conduct something called wet and dry routine, where you remove all of your wet kit, put on dry kit, and then proceed to your sleeping bag. And then when you get called up for sentry or for your next job or whatever it is, in the middle of the night, you get shaken when you've just fallen asleep, and then you have to get back into your wet kit, and it's frozen. You have to snap it. You put your wet trousers in like a freezer bag essentially, and you put that in your Bergen. You stow it away. Good drills, and then you wake up about 2 hours later because it's like -2. That wet stuff is just frozen solid. So now you have to like crack it open, kick it to get your feet in the trousers. What I imagine happened with him, I'm getting to, is that things shrivel up when you're cold. Yeah. I imagine that happened, and he's like getting dressed in the dark and like twisting shit around, and then that's probably what
vacuum packed his bollocks.
You can imagine what happened next. Yeah, so that's probably what happened there.
Right, sweet. So phase 2 of training.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of that is you're building towards Commando test week at the end.
Yeah.
Or am I jumping ahead of?
Kind of, but no, that's the broad brush, I guess. You're building physically towards. So remember the Commando test is a physical test, and so the rest of it is soldiering. So in terms of, to be a good Marine, you have to have both. You can't just be physically fit, because then you'll fall apart on the battlefield. And again, the same. You can't be the other way around, because you can't then keep up. You can't carry your mate when he's been shot. All that sort of stuff. So it's a synergy of both. And so
obviously you've got Commando test week, and that's measured within pass or fail test.
Yeah.
How are they measuring soldiering? Is it ad hoc as you're going along?
Kind of. Yeah. So on exercise, they'll obviously look at your soldiering skills, and they'll give you little tests. So they might tell you, right, Shep, this time you're going to run the patrol, so you're going to be the IC for this patrol. And then in that moment, then they're looking at your communication skills, looking at your tactical awareness, that kind of thing. So if you're just blindly going through and not checking anything, not checking your lads have got everything squared away, they one, know that you're not a very good leader, and two, they probably know that you're not quite there yet in terms of the learning curve to become a good soldier. So before the final tests, you'll have final exercise, which is what you're building towards in a soldiering sense. So that's like a 7-day exercise where you get tested with the final things, and then you have before or after that, depending on when you joined, you have field firing, which is the same as an exercise, but now you're using live rounds. So now the people who are shit at soldiering really show, because they can't.
You can't fake it anymore.
Yeah, you can't fake it because so the thing that people do is when you got blank rounds, when you're firing at nothing essentially, but you're firing at an enemy target on an exercise. People are just like not look through their sight and just like ping it, and and that's no good, obviously, is it? Because you're not hitting anything. On field firing, they'll have targets that are metal, and they've got technology in them that you know when you hit them.
Right.
And so if you're just shooting anywhere, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to do any damage. So that actually shows up in that environment. So they have a couple of different tests that they can gauge whether you're a good enough soldier, and if you're not, you get retrained.
And how did you get on with that? Actual soldiering side of the job.
I think okay. Again, it's quite a steep learning curve, because you're going from no knowledge to now having to be an elite soldier. So it is quite a steep learning curve, and you have to be at the end of training good enough to be deployed to a battlefield. So you can't finish training and then think I'm going to learn now. You kind of have to be the finished product by the time you get there. So it is a steep learning curve. I think I got on okay. There was obviously moments, I think everyone has them, where you fuck up or you forget something or you fall asleep on sentry or something like that. Everyone has those moments, but I think because they're happening to you, you feel like you're the only person they're happening to.
Yeah.
But I think everyone has them and everyone experiences that. And it is a steep learning curve for everyone. But I think I've gone okay.
Well, just for context as to how elite this level of soldiering is, according to Wikipedia, so
great source.
Take that with a large pinch of salt. 26,000 applications every year.
Yeah.
To the Royal Marines Commandos. Only 400 make it.
Okay, that's a big drop
That
off.
sounds mental. If it's true, it's a goat stat.
I think that's a good kind of accurate stat. So what they'll be,
even if it's only half of that, that is still mental.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think the application process is going to weed out a certain amount of people. Before you even step through the gates.
Maybe it's slightly misleading, I guess.
Well,
because
they're still getting people apply. So people who apply are still interested, and they might fall at the first hurdle of the interview, or they might fall at the physical test, or whatever. So they've got a lot of tests to get through even before they get to training, and then when they get to training, then it starts to ramp up, and then you do get a big dropout rate again. So I think for most people, physical preparation is something they maybe lack that holds them back. Because that's the only thing you can really practice. The soldiering side of things, they're going to teach you, and if you can't keep up with the learning curve, you'll just get retrained, and that's fine. And some people it's not for. Some people just don't want to do it when they've passed a certain point.
Well, Shep, congratulations. You've made it to the end of training.
Yes. Okay, cool.
Commando test week? Hit me.
Okay, so it's actually a more relaxed week than you would maybe think. So you would think that week's horrendous. That week's like the worst one.
I'm not gonna lie, it sounds quite intense.
Yeah, it's intense in a physical sense, but nothing else really happens. Like you have a few lectures in the day. Every other week, you've got to do loads of phys, but you've also got to do everything else. So you've got to deal with the admin, all this other stuff. On Commando test weeks, they want you to succeed by that point because they've bought into you that much. Yeah. They know you, So they actually leave you alone a little bit. Once you've done the test, that's you. You can sort of relax, recover for that next test. But it is physically demanding, don't get me wrong. You go and do the endurance course, I think, on the Monday, which is, if anyone doesn't know, you basically walk up there, which is 4 miles. So that's your warm-up. And then you start the test, which you've got 21 pounds and a rifle, so 32 pounds of kit. You'll go and do 2 miles of obstacle course, like cross-country, tunnels, deep water obstacles, that kind of thing. You'll go through that 2 miles, and then from there you're wet, so your boots are heavier. The terrain's still pretty against you at that point. Then you have a 4 mile run back to camp. That has to be done in 73 minutes, I believe. And then following that, you have to have kept your rifle in good working order, because you then go on the range and you have to shoot 10 shots at 25 metres, which is super easy. It's not a challenge of marksmanship at all, because you're in the prone position, everything's stable, you can hit. Anyone can do that without any training, really. But the challenge is to keep your rifle working that whole time, because you're going through the water, you're going through mud. So if you're just not giving a shit and jamming the end of your rifle into something, you're hitting the sight on some tunnels or whatever, you're not protecting it, you're going to get to that test, and either your rifle's going to jam because you haven't done anything, or you'll throw your zero off. So before that, you'll zero the sights to you and to your shape, body shape, and all that kind of stuff. And then if you've knocked it off, even if you think you're aiming centre chest, your bullets are going to go up there. So that actually happened to one of my mates, not on the test, but in the warm up, in the walk up there, we were behind schedule, and so the last 800 metres, our sergeant was like, right, run it in now. So he started running and tripped over before it even started, smashed his rifle, so he was doomed before it even started. He actually got a better time than me on the course, got to the shoot, and fucked it.
Right, so you got endurance course. What next?
9 mile speed march. Everyone says it's the easiest one. I would probably agree. It's just it's as it says, 9 miles in a group of people in 90 minutes. You've got to do a 10-minute mile with the same kit, so 21 pounds in your webbing and a rifle, so 32 pounds. You kind of walk the uphills and you'll jog the downhills and flats, and then that gets you in 10-minute miles, 90 minutes, job done.
Endurance course, 9 mile speed march.
Yep. Tarzan assault course next. The Tarzan assault course is a little bit of a different physical demand. So you've got obviously the longer stuff, 90 minutes of endurance, of 9 mile speed march, 73 minutes of the endurance. You've then got 13 minutes of like a sprint of the Tarzan. So it's whole body, everything's working. You're trying to balance on things. You're pulling yourself along with your arms. You're doing monkey bars. You're sprinting between obstacles, so that's legs. You know, everything's working, so that, you know, you're metabolically taxed at that point. You've got the same weight on you. You have to get around that course in a very challenging time. 13 minutes is not a long amount of time. If you fuck up any obstacles, you're probably going to fail. You then finish it with a kind of best effort climb up a vertical wall. You might have seen that 30-foot wall with a rope, and you climb up it. So you imagine, to put it into context, you imagine doing the worst CrossFit workout of your life that's like 11 minutes long. You've just sprinted for 11 minutes, and then you get on the assault bike and have to go max chat for 20 seconds. That's probably where you're at, and then you get to the top and you have to shout your name.
Yeah, to conceptualise it for a civvy, it's like the worst CrossFit workout ever at a go ape.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, in terms of physical demand, if anyone's ever done Fran, the workout, 21:15:9, thrusters and pull-ups, that's 2 minutes, 5 minutes for some people. My time's 2:14, so take that. If you were to continue that, because that's max effort, this is asking your body to continue that effort level for now 10 plus minutes. So that's how you've got to look at it. You're going max effort for that period of time. It's horrendous.
That is rank.
Yeah.
So from an outsider, I always thought the Tarzan Assault course looked the most fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The run throughs are like the where you learning the obstacles and getting familiarised with them. They're great. It's like a go ape, as long as you're not scared of heights, which luckily I wasn't. But the actual test is terrible. Yeah. It's not good. I got one of the best times on that because I'm very it'll flex. But I'm better at that short, sharp fizz than I am at the endurance stuff. Yeah.
So we've got 3 squared away.
Yeah.
What are we finishing with?
The big bad boy, the 30 miler. So you're going to do 30 miles. It's exactly what it says on the tin. In 8 hours over Dartmoor with 35 pounds of kit. That's obviously horrendous, but it is your last one, and because of that, there's not a lot that's going to stop you at that point. It's the culmination of 8 months now of graft. So there's nothing really in your mind that's going to stop you, short of like a broken leg. You know, you're going to probably get over that line. I know people actually who've done things like that,
stress
like
fractures and stuff,
fractures in their femur, that kind of thing, where you would think it's going to get in your head and you would stop. The adrenaline just goes, and sometimes you take it. The 30 miler is ran generally the same every time. So for a Marine, anyway, for the officers, it's different. They tend to smash the first 20 miles, so they do it, a lot of it running, quite a lot of it jogging, that kind of thing. And then the last 10 miles, you can kind of walk it in, and so you earn the right to do that, and you jog across the bridge at the end. With every test, regardless of what it is, you have to finish strong. So the idea is that you would get, your physical thing is to get you to battle, and then you have to fight at the end of that, don't you? So to get there, and like you'd finish a workout and lie on the floor and be breathing out your arse, that kind of thing. There's none of that, because if you do that and you were to do that in the real world,
you're not going to be able to fight.
You can't do it. So every troop will jog across the finish line of the 30 miler, even though you've just done 29.9 miles of horrendous fizz.
Yeah, and do you get clapped in as well?
Yeah.
Because I'd shout out to the BBC documentary as well, because they do that in that.
This is a lot of Eddie's knowledge.
My prior research to this was Wikipedia and iPlayer, basically.
That's all you need. So you get clapped in. You have generally some big dogs from the Marines or the Navy, so like the colonels and all them big brass. And then you have parents of the lads come down to that finish point, will clap you in. That's about it. And maybe you might have a documentary team if you're lucky.
Imagine being absolutely finished. And, like the BBC camera crew just there, like.
That's what I always think. That's what I always think when I see these documentaries. I'm like, I can't imagine trying to be, face to camera when you're in that situation. I wouldn't have been very good anyway.
Mind you got a little claim to fame, didn't you?
Did
you make it onto the Marine Corps YouTube or something?
That was like, for a period of time, they did a YouTube video of every PRMC, and you can actually find mine on there. I think it was the 24th, if anyone wants to look, 24th of May 2016. So if you want to go and have a look at that, you'll see me when I was 18 years old hanging out. Yeah.
Right. Past Commando test week.
Yep.
Gucci.
All good.
You're now a Marine. Or
not quite. One more week.
Simple?
One more week. So that's week 31, I believe. And then week 32 is King Squad week. So I don't know how much you've heard about that. Have you heard about it much or no?
after the application process, this is probably the thing that I know the second least about.
Cool. Okay, so the King Squad week is basically on the end of that week. You'd have your pass out parade, so you'd have all your family, friends and family come and see you pass out as a Marine. To get to that point, you've got a lot of preparation, a lot of admin, a lot of drill. Which is shite.
This is why I normally switch off because it's drill.
Yeah, and it's dull, which is kind of the nature of it. So you think after those 31 weeks that hard work's done now, you can chill out. Not a chance. You've got to be proper switched on. You're working probably longer than some of the other weeks in that last week to actually get shit done.
So basically you're doing a lot of drill. You want to look the bollocks for pass out parade. Yeah. To what extent do the lads at that point just want to chin it off, or do you feel like you've earned the privilege to do it, so you just tolerate it?
You tolerate it for the most part. You tolerate it, but also remember you're still in training, so you don't really got any choice. You know, your drill instructor is now who you answer to that week. You don't really see your training team; they're going to take a siesta, and your drill instructor is who you answer to, and they're mean bastards when they want to be. So you don't really want to piss them off, because I've seen King Squads. Normally you do get privilege and you get treated better. It's more relaxed. You know, if you're doing well, they'll reward you for it. They'll give you the rope, and if you do well, that's fine. You get to push in at the galley, which is great. You can go to the front. Yeah, and then, but if you're not, and you're not playing the game, you're not playing ball, they'll fuck you up. They'll remind you that, look, you're still in training, you haven't done it yet. And they're like, I've seen King Squad troops running back and forth from the drill shed at like 2 a.m. with their blues on because they haven't had a polished brass or whatever it is. And so in that last week, you can have a very bad time if they want you to.
Yeah. So for you, thinking timeline wise, bearing in mind you're now doing a lot of drill in what I imagine is quite thick uniform.
Yeah, it's not too bad. You generally don't train you don't do the prep in the finished stuff. You'll leave that. Yeah.
But I'm just trying to think it's going to be hot.
Yeah, you're right. It was, when was it when I passed out? Well, we'll see. June. Yeah, so it would have been hot. So June when I passed out, I think it would have been warm, but I don't think that's much of an issue because it is in the drill shed. And to be honest, after 8 months of marine training, you relish in the warm.
I was going to say, is that just
you're loving life.
Is that just so minor at that point?
Yeah,
It's not even.
It's not much of an issue, but and also you've just been cold for too long. You like a bit of warmth in, and too much of a problem. Yeah.
So you get through that.
Yeah.
Pass out parade.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when you get given your green lid?
No, so you get given your green lid at the end of the 30 miler. Oh. So you have it.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, you already got it. You already got it, but you can't wear it, which is mental. But they actually give it you. It's funny. They give it you before the commando tests to shape and to like get ready, just in case you pass. They like taunt you with it.
There's a lot of teasing going on here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about this.
And then a lot of people don't want to touch it because there's a big adage that if you touch a green lid before you've passed out, you're cursed.
Superstition.
Yeah. Something will happen to you, even at that point. But even when it's your green lid, you get given. So you get given it at the end of the 30 miler when you're fucked. I remember the officer who gave it me was like, "You're right. You're really pale." I was like, "Yeah, I just ran 30 miles. You couldn't give me my fucking lid." And then and so you get it then, and then you kind of have to give it back or whatever. So you can't wear it, or you just put it in your locker. Yeah,
that's a bit of an anticlimax.
A little bit, but you still get that moment of standing in a troop square. We had actually the officer who gave it us was a lieutenant colonel in the SBS, so they got him over to give a little speech and all that kind of stuff. So it is really cool when you get it because, like I say, it's the accumulation of all that work, and for me, the accumulation of 4 years of wanting to do it. So it's a pretty good feeling when that happens. But and then you have to kind of wait to enjoy it, and then you can enjoy it after the pass out parade, I guess.
Yeah. So what now then?
Yeah. So pass out parade is, I believe, on a Friday or Thursday. Normally you'll do that, and you'll go to the non-commissioned officers bar to go and have some drinks. You'll drink with the training team a little bit, so that wall is like taken down. The wall of professionalism almost is taken down. You kind of have drinks with them on a first name basis, which hasn't happened before, which is quite cool.
Is that them letting you in, so to speak?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, the
Like
families are all there as well.
Right.
You know, it's a whole thing. But yeah, they're letting you into the boys' club essentially,
Yeah.
and then from there you're cut away for the weekend. That's you done.
All that, and you get a long weekend.
Oh yeah, you get a little
Fuck
weekend
me.
off, and then you get 1 weekend, and then you're back at Limpston on the Monday as a train rank. So you've got your flashes on, your lid on. It's a different feeling, a different thing. But I didn't even go home. I went. My family came down, so we had somewhere to stay in Exeter, so I didn't have to travel, which was nice. And then you just enjoy that weekend. Back to Limpston on the Monday. For us, it was enemy detail, so it's called Ramart, I believe. I don't know why it's called that. But it's enemies. You're playing enemy for the wider corps, for the rest of the corps,
Right.
or for special forces. So when they are in exercise and they need someone to pose as enemy, you'll go and do that, which is pretty cushy, not too bad. Actually, for me and I think 3 of our troop, because we were at the end of the alphabet. They did the alphabet and they were like, we need 20 blokes. We need, 13 blokes out of 16. And I was the last 3. And so I didn't have to do anything. For those 2 weeks, I stayed on camp. I was like, this is amazing. Me and 2 of my good mates, who were also at the end of the alphabet, luckily, from training, stayed at Limpston. Didn't have anything to do. They were like, right, report to this guy, this warrant officer, at different intervals in the day. So 8:30, at 2:30. 8:30 we'd go to him. He'd be like, yeah, nothing for you lads, thin out. And then so we'd go and do fizz, or we'd go to or we'd go to Exeter and just chill. And then at 2:30 we'd do the same, and he'd be like, yeah, thin out for the day. So that would be, for that period of time, it was again summer, June, so we would just go to the beach, or we would go get pissed in Exeter. I was like, if this is what being a fucking Marine's like, it was all worth it. It's class. And so that was my first kind of 2 weeks as a commando, just
That's
chilling.
I didn't know that. So I thought after you passed out, you were straight out of Limpston.
No, I think you might be now. But yeah, you did 2 weeks as like in holding.
Yeah.
And then you went to do your driver training, which we'll get into.
Yeah, well, park that thought, because that's for another episode.
Yeah.
But just wrapping up this basic training episode.
Yeah.
Some quick fires. Best and worst parts of training.
Okay, so let's go best first. Everyone always, there's obvious answers, and then there's probably a bit more nuanced answers. Everyone always says the end.
Yeah, go on. To stop you before you give yours, a lot of people also say like going out on a weekend.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say that, be more specific.
Okay. I would probably say, for me personally, it was the weekend after the bottom field pass out, which we didn't really go into too much because it's not a massive milestone, but for me it was, because I failed it once. I remained in the same troop because I passed it second time round, but I had at that point made really good mates in that troop in that kind of 5-6 week period. I was lighter. I was one of the lighter lads in the troop, so carrying someone 200 metres with full kit was not easy. You had to do that in 90 seconds. I didn't get there first time, did get there second time, so that elation for me, and then being able to go out on the weekend and celebrate that with the people you'd stayed with, was probably one of the better experiences. Because yes, getting your lid at the end of training is brilliant, but for me personally, having taken that loss early in the week and then gone back and done it, because I thoroughly believe, so when you fail bottom field pass out, what you do for bottom field pass out, just to run through it, is a full rope climb, a timed run of the assault course, which is about 800 metres long. It's a 5-minute time cap, a fireman's carry, so you'll fireman's carry someone, you'll both have £30, so £60 plus the geezer. Sprint that 200 metres in 90 seconds. And then you'll do a regain, so you'll go across the rope, hang underneath it, you will have seen it, swing back on top. Yeah.
Stinking.
Everything else was sound. I was perfectly fine with everything else. The fireman's carry was always where I tripped up. And so I didn't do it, and then when you fail something, you can rerun it at the end of the session. So you've ragged yourself.
Which is fucking no use to anyone.
You've ragged yourself completely. You've done, what is it, like an hour of testing yourself in fizz,
basically.
And then you go and try again. Clearly didn't happen in the second run through. And then 2 days later, you go and do it again. And that at that point.
So is that simultaneously the worst and best bit of training, or have you got an even worse story?
Oh, I've probably got a worse one. I think. Oh yeah, I got this one. This this is up there for sure, unless I haven't.
Are you sitting comfortably?
Yeah, so that exercise I mentioned where it got real, exercise quick cover, week 4. Hadn't really done anything too bad by then. So during the last bit of an exercise, or actually every morning, you do a kit muster. And so our muster point was about 800 metres away up a massive hill from where we were camping. So where we were held up in our little harbour, they would give us a timing for the morning. So they would give us a timing of like 07. We had to be up that hill, everything laid out, good to go. So clearly, to work back from that, you have to be there to prep all your kit by 6:15 probably to get everything good to go. I didn't do that.
The long and the short.
Yeah, I did not do that. So what I did, obviously, you just get into grips with how to do everything. So cleaning your weapon, cleaning your magazines, cleaning everything is a struggle. So this takes longer than it should do. So I had all my magazines de-bombed, which just means there's no rounds in them. You take all the rounds out, put them in something where you're not going to lose them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to count them. You take your springs out, which have been submerged in water, so they're all rusty. You're trying to fucking get rid of the rust. And so I had my magazines de-bombed, springs out. Takes a while to put them back in. Certainly when week 4, and I had my poncho still out, so that takes a while to put back in. We're 800 metres away from where I need to be. It's 10:02. So I'd have to pack everything up, run there, unpack everything, lay it out perfectly. My troop boss was stood over me, like being a mega throbber. He's like, "You know what time it is, recruit shepherd?" And I was like, "Yeah, 10:02, sir." He was like, "Do you think that you're going to get these magazines put back together, your poncho back in?" He's like proper longing it out. Poncho back in, going to gas sweep your area, sprint 800 metres and lay everything out again in 10 minutes. I was like, yeah, I'll be fine.
Do we recently think he's discovered sarcasm? He's giving it the hard sell.
He was proper giving it the hard sell, just rubbing it in, just knowing that I was going to be on the flank, which I'll get to in a minute. I then managed to collate all my kit. I was like, had stuff in my hands, had like magazines in my hands, sprinting up the hill. So I knew I'd have to take them back apart.
Like a fucking human buckaroo.
Yeah, so I got to the top of the hill. Obviously didn't have time to lay it all out perfectly. Just put my poncho out and that was it. They were like, right, time. Stop moving. And yeah, so when you go through that kit muster process, that inspection, you'll get people who pass and get a reward, and people who get on the flank and get fucked. And so the people who pass, there's like 5 of them because week 4, not many. Got bacon sandwiches from the training team, and that's obviously horrendous to see.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want.
The people on the flank get a proper thrashing, and because they knew everyone else on the flank maybe had like a rusty weapon or whatever, had something that was not great. I had nothing out, so I was like the worst of the worst at that point. And so they tailored the thrashing to me to be the worst, and that was terrible. So yeah, there's the hill involved. You're crawling up and down the hill. You're walking up and down the hill. Your legs are on fire. You then got to drag people, then getting you wet. Then you got to walk back to camp while you're wet. All these sort of things. That was probably one of the worst and most embarrassing times in training when that officer was looking over me like, "Do you really think you're going to get there in 10 minutes?" I was like, yeah. So that was probably the worst.
Shout out to that guy.
Yeah, shout out to that officer. Character building.
Right. I think we've covered all the bases, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we've done well. Covered the kind of process from joining to passing out, which is all we wanted to do for this episode. As we said in the beginning, it'll be a 5-part series. So this is one of the parts, and we'll expand on that as we go through.
Perfect.
Nice one.
See you next week.
See you next time.
Lovely. That was good, actually. Happy with that.
I'm mega happy with that.